A reading from Pete Frates. Be passionate, be genuine, be hardworking, and don't ever be afraid to be great. Here ends the reading.
A reading from the motivational speaker and coach Inky Johnson. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what the storm is all about. Here ends the reading.
A reading from Tom Brady's Hall of Fame induction speech. To be successful at anything, the truth is you don't have to be special. You just have to be what most people aren't. Consistent, determined, and willing to work for it. No shortcuts. Here ends the reading.
"10 years ago, right down the street at Woodward Elementary School, there was a young boy in the 3rd grade who couldn't have been more above life, as he was set to depart school early in an effort to continue the annual tradition of attending the Boston Red Sox home opener with his father. The pregame ceremonies commenced with the normal introduction of the roster. But this year, the organization added an extra ceremony honoring Pete Frates and his heroic efforts in combating ALS. At this moment, he was furious. There was one thing standing between him and watching his favorite players play his favorite sport. But after temporary frustrations passed, and the announcer described the paralyzing nature of ALS, he sat there in awe of what was happening on the field of America's most beloved ballpark. As Pete Frates needed the assistance of a fully automated wheelchair to be able to maneuver himself around. While staring at Pete and his family, he slowly leaned on the railing of his seat and turned to his dad and said, "Dad, I'm not going to end up like that, right?" "What? No." And his dad began to explain how rare the disease was. Now, of course, after hearing that he was safe, the selfish 3rd grader in him wanted the game to start. So he tuned out the rest of the ceremony and eventually enjoyed a Red Sox win, as he was ready to never speak of ALS ever again. Life continued without much conflict for this little boy, and while life without conflict is a dream for everyone, we all know that simply is not how life works. In fact, this little boy was so immune to conflict that he couldn't handle it at all. If he struck out, there would be tears and helmets flying everywhere, and don't even get me started on what would happen when it was time to do math homework. Does anyone remember doing the quick, 60 problem math sheets in 3rd grade, 3rd grade? Yeah, seems easy enough. Well, this 3rd grade boy would always rush to complete it. And when he was done, his dad would check it. But instead of telling this poor kid the answers to the problems he got wrong, and there were always problems he got wrong, these conversations would go like this. "All set, Dad? It looks great. Besides for 4 of them. Oh, okay, which ones? I'm not going to tell you." And his dad would never budge. This process could easily take 30 minutes a night, and the little boy never understood why his father made him struggle through something that could have been done so easily had he simply just told him the answers. Now, for anyone that's ever been in a math classroom with me, you know that I'm not exactly a mathematician. So you've probably figured out by now that I am the main character in this story. Flash forward 2 years later, I was now preparing to end my 5th grade year smoothly. Then suddenly, I found myself surrounded by my mom, dad, sister, and a colorless ambiance that flooded the living room as my dad shared that he had been diagnosed with ALS. Eventually, the disease would go on to take him away from us, but everything that has happened in between my dad's diagnosis and now has played a role in shaping the person who stands before you today. Following the diagnosis, I struggled with everything as I was wrapping up my 6th grade year. Schoolwork felt optional, and sports didn't have the same appeal, as with every minute on the field, I could feel the time fading away with my lifelong coach, and I was scared to risk this time that I had left with my dad to spend any time with my friends. The disease I was never supposed to worry about was finally starting to take over, as my dad's voice began to slowly fade away, and it was only a matter of time until ALS was going to completely silence him, until it came time for the town's election, when my dad taught me to never stop chasing my dreams, no matter the circumstances, as he decided to run for and eventually win the open position on the town's Board of Selectmen, all while battling ALS. I share this story with you all today because nobody in this room will ever get to meet my dad, but everyone in this room has helped me overcome many of the struggles that came from this horrible time in my life, struggles that I once imagined would be insurmountable. While there are still some bad days here and there, According to my mom's standards, I'm doing all right. Immediately following my dad's death, as you can imagine, life was very difficult. And on my worst days, I struggled to even get out of bed, fearing the idea of failure. A year later, when I started at St. Mark's, I vividly remember sitting in the car in the front circle, crying because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to handle the demanding lifestyle here at St. Mark's. Until my mom came up with a simple philosophy. And now, I want to introduce my mom. My mom is the most amazing, powerful, generous, inspiring figure in my life. And she also cannot cook. But there is nobody that I would rather have leading me through this story. Now, Mom, would you please share that inspirational piece of wisdom that you shared with this little boy all those years ago?
Don't stress, Charlie. D equals diploma.
That's right. It seems counterintuitive. But this low expectation gave me the grace I needed to get out of the car and start my journey. And for those of you wondering, I have still yet to achieve that goal of getting a D. Now, as I walk back, it wouldn't be fair if I did not highlight my sister, Courtney. You challenge me every day to be my very best. In fact, about 30 hours ago, I had a completely different speech ready to go. But I wrote that speech with the intention for it to be easy for me to share with you all, and not fear having to shed a tear or embarrass myself in front of everybody. But my sister quickly reminded me that I was capable of so much more. The purpose of this talk is not to impress all 405 of you. In fact, if 404 of you hated it, I wouldn't care. So long as I reach that one person who may be struggling right now. To that person, I want to say, I see you, I am here for you, and I want you to remember that you've already made it through 100% of your worst days. Court, you've come so far, and there is nobody I would rather have by my side as we navigate this storm together. And yes, that means that she is the one to blame if any of you do not like this talk. All right, let's continue. For those of you who have been here, you know that I've also had 4 surgeries since I first walked through that front circle. And that little joyous boy would have never been able to make it here on the stage without the countless examples of heroism, bravery, determination, and selflessness that my dad, Pete Frates, and the rest of the people I've met with ALS exhibit daily. However, that plays only a small part in why I've been able to keep going. Another piece of that puzzle lies here in the community at St. Mark's. While I do not have enough time to share every example and highlight everyone, I do want to share a few examples that illuminate all there is to offer here in this community. The most impactful part of this community for me has been the support I have received from those whom I least expected it from. The first example comes from an experience playing football. Sophomore year, we were set to scrimmage against Milton Academy in what was going to be my first high school football action. Our offensive line that year consisted of myself and 4 up-performers, none of whom still play football. On the other hand, Milton traveled to Belmont Field carrying a van of all people who currently play football in college. The joint practice was set up where the linemen were down on the JV field hockey field. Meanwhile, everyone else got to play on the nice game field. Regardless, it's safe to say it didn't go well for us linemen. In fact, it went so bad that my little sophomore self not only got pancaked, but as I was trying to help myself up, I found myself surrounded by these 3 large, angry Milton Academy monsters, and they were not shy about expressing their emotions. Meanwhile, I was still on the ground, and I had no clue what they were even mad about. But there was nothing poor little Charlie could do besides to pray and fear for his life. Until suddenly, it stopped. And to my surprise, there was only one voice screaming now. Levi McAllister, a senior at the time, who I had never really connected with to this point, came sprinting down from the game field to my rescue, jolted me up and said, "I got you, bro," then sprinted back to the game field. Next, there's Mr. Corzini, someone who freshman year had no reason to even know my name. He wasn't my coach or teacher, and to be honest, I should have been nothing to him. But he has been the first to call me each of the 4 times I have ever gotten surgery. Knowing that another male adult figure has my back continues to mean the world to me. Finally, this last example comes courtesy of someone who I had never spoken to before this moment. 2 years ago, in Miss Brown's Algebra 2 class, a majority of our grades were based on how well our randomized groups did. And the Super Bowl of events would be the group problem set exam days. With my luck, one of these rare events fell on the same day as the anniversary of my dad's death, and it's safe to say that I did not have a great performance. I felt horrible, not so much that my grade would be impacted, but because I knew this also meant my teammates would receive the same bad grade. I sent a message to the group consisting of 2 girls in my grade who I barely knew at the time, and they were both incredibly understanding and acknowledged that everyone has bad days, and I expected that to be the end of it. But later in the evening, I got a message from one of my teammates, Hadley, explaining her recent struggles and offering me her support. For me, this was the moment where I finally felt seen and understood, or better yet, like I belonged here. I shared these experiences with you all today to highlight that support lies everywhere within the community, whether that be on your teams, from your teachers, or even from that one annoying math classmate. Now, with all the support I have received, the other hole without my dad was the small life lessons that he never got to share with me. So I've had to learn a few of those the hard way. For example, last year on the days of our football games, we would wear chapel dress, suit, shirt, tie, etc. Also, a quick side note, I'm slightly color deficient, so some shades of colors look a little bit differently than they're supposed to. So basically, on this day, I was wearing what I believed to be a light red shirt with a red football tie. That was until I walked into Mr. Spoletta's 5th form English class, and Ella greeted me with, "Well, you're awfully colorful today." Turns out, the shirt was pink. And yes, that shirt-tie combination has been retired. I was also fortunate enough to get an 18-year-old roommate during my sophomore year. I was 15. Most of you should know him. He graduated last year, and his name is John Hegarty. Well, he taught me how to tie a tie, shave, and do all those other little things that my dad never got the time to share with me. There's one last person, and the first time I asked for help locating her, I was instructed to fear her. But that may have been the worst piece of advice I have ever received. Miss Maddock taught that soft little boy how to keep fighting even when all I wanted to do was quit, pushing me to my limits each and every single day, while also having my back every step of the way. Now, while I could have done without the 4 surgeries, I am eternally grateful for the knowledge and support that Miss Maddock gives me daily. While I am nowhere near perfect, I am proud of where I am today. And I can without a doubt say that without those horrible experiences, including my 60 nightly math problems, I never would have learned that the easiest way to get something done may not always be the right way. This alone has been the greatest lesson I have ever learned, as it applies to everything. Every one of those examples that I just shared proves how doing the hard thing can change the world. It's easy to sit on a hill and watch as a random freshman boy gets surrounded by a pack of Milton Academy monsters. It's easy to forgo calling a student that you don't even know before their surgery. It's easy to get mad at someone who costs you a bad grade because of their personal struggles. It's easy to leave your roommate behind, not knowing how to grow up. It's easy to sit back and laugh when a classmate comes to class looking like the cover of a Lucky Charms box. It's easy to overlook the lost little boy as he asks for advice because your job description only calls on you to care for physical injuries. But had those 6 people not chosen to take the hard route, as Dr. Hills describes, putting themselves at a disadvantage to give me an advantage, I would not be here speaking in front of you all today. While most of Tom Brady's success came on the football field, his speech that Jeremiah shared earlier applies to all facets of life. And I want to challenge everyone in here to succeed in being kind to each other. In his words, you have to be consistent to be successful. Anyone can do the hard thing once. So let's set ourselves apart. But you have to start somewhere. So, I want to close with a quote from my childhood favorite movie character, Paul Blart. If you believe that the only purpose in life is to serve yourself, then you have no purpose. Help someone today. Thank you.